remove the barriers and start looking for anything that makes you happy or helps you get through whatever it is that you need help getting through. Affirmation, making a decision, looking at your horoscope, and it just makes sense that day. The more you are open to receiving, the more you will be gifted.
Welcome to Girls Gone Gritty. We're so excited for you to join us again. We're going to have an exciting episode today, and it's all about signs. Signs from above, signs from those on earth, signs just in general and what they mean to you. So we have a lot to talk about today because in our lives, we have been very, I think, open. The three of us have been open to seeing things. And I hope that our listeners will come away with some insights on this episode that they'll be a little bit more open to seeing some signs that can help guide them in their life.
I think my entire life as a parent, I've been telling my kids, you have to believe to receive. And I truly believe that you have to be open and you have to acknowledge that you're okay with receiving signs. If you're a closed book, they're not going to come, you're not going to recognize them. You're just not going to be open to them. And so at a very young age, all of my kiddos, especially because Peter Pan was like their favorite movie ever. And like we just pretended Neverland and fairies were real. And fairies
They are.
Yeah, they are. I do believe in fairies. I do. I do. I do believe in fairies. I mean, they would say that over and over again because we did really believe. And I think that that's when the magic of belief really took over my body. And I started just seeing more and more things and recognizing that they're gifts. And it might be if you're in a weird place and you need to make a decision, you see something that makes you feel like that's the answer, or you've lost a loved one and something that you shared in common, whether it be butterflies or dragonflies or cardinals or rainbows, those are real. They come when you need to see them the most.
They always come to see you right when you need them the most. My whole life has been, all right, look to the spirits, look to the signs, help me make decisions. And of course, I have mediums in my back pocket. Who would know that mediums actually have answered so many of my questions from work, from boyfriends, from injuries. I mean, since I was young, it's like almost, my mom always said, we're all kind of witchy inside, my sister, myself, and my mom. And I believe in it and I follow it. And I tell people, hey, follow your heart, look for that sign. One story is back in the day when I was skiing the Kirkwood Extremes. Now I've professional athlete before we got to look at it. And I'm like, okay, left, right. Okay. I knew every line, every turn, and no one had ever skied that zone before. Long story short, the next day I knew my line. It was my time to go. 4 people in front of me had been airlifted by punctured lungs and this and that, but that's a whole nother topic. I go and I got this tap, like I was skiing my line. I'm going into this little chute and all of a sudden I saw my grandfather like tap me on the shoulder and say, go left, go left, go left. I swear to God, Jack Cross was there saying, go left. And I should have went left and I went straight and it was like, boom, crash so hard, almost, do a roll, land, stand up. I'm like, oh, I think I just broke my leg. But had I listened to him, I would have went left. And every injury I've had, like just, I feel the sign. I know what's going to happen before it does. I mean, even my sister, before I broke my neck, she looked at me because we were in Tahoe for the funeral of my friend. And she looks at me and we're driving in my 1963 Fleetwood. It was MC's. And she looks at me and she goes, you have to leave Tahoe right now. Something really bad is going to happen to you. And it was like, you got that chill like I have now. And I was like, oh my God, no, I'm fine. And I like pushed it out of my head. Who knew the next day I would go through my broken neck and everything, but they're out there and you
gotta
just
listen to them.
Yeah.
Listen to them.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, and from that's a crazy story of like huge signs and unfortunately they went the other way. I think there's also like the little signs. And I feel like, Darian, I know that you've seen birds. I was with my great great uncle last night, my grandfather's youngest brother, who's 98, by the way. Great genes, I pray. We're sitting there, we're talking, and his name's Pio. And all of a sudden I look and there's a cardinal in the window, and that's my grandfather's bird. That's his brother. And he showed up while we're all sitting there talking about him. And had I not looked like in the mirror to see out the window, because I'm like not facing out, I'm facing in. I see, there he is. He showed up and I felt him. And, to me, that's a sign. And some people be like, oh, cardinals are around. It's like, no, no, not at that moment. Not at that time. I don't see them all the time. But yesterday I was blessed to be with this amazing human being, and his brother showed up. So I think that's kind of cool.
I have been the beneficiary of multiple signs recently. I lost my mother, which is a heavy duty. Lost my mother last week. And I know that she knows I'm a very spiritual person, and I'm very connected, and I'm always looking, and I'm always receiving. And my mom, it was a heavy situation the way it all transpired. We were not expecting this. She did have cancer, but we weren't expecting it to go down the way that it did. And I was supposed to receive a phone call from ICU kind of letting me know what the story was with my mom. And I had fallen asleep because of crying and being emotional and waiting for this phone call, this dreaded phone call that didn't come at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning. Instead, I got a text. And, I woke up really quickly. My daughter's with me. I opened my phone thinking I'm going to read the text, and it's on Instagram. And it is like this heavenly voice saying to my daughter, my beautiful daughter. And it was like a goodbye, and I'm okay, and I'm going to be with you every step of the way. And it was bizarre. I mean, I just literally looked at my daughter and started bawling because she looked at me and said, Mom, that's Mimi. She's letting you know she's okay. So that was one heavy sign. And it was like a heaven-esque voice coming out of my phone at the loudest volume possible. And I didn't even hit Instagram. Another sign that happened the very next day. I'm now driving from Jacksonville to the hospital to say goodbye to my mom. And a series of events transpired. Looking back now, they all make sense. My mom had a DNR, and, no one knew that she had the do not resuscitate in that moment. So she was resuscitated. Well, actually, it was 25 minutes of working on her where she had no pulse. And then when they called me and I was on speakerphone with the EMTs, they were telling me that they had been working on her and that she had no vitals, no pulse. And I said, well, she has a DNR. And I think she heard my voice, because all of a sudden the EMT is like, I'm on the phone with her daughter and she has a DNR. And all of a sudden my mom, her pulse came out of nowhere. And now it's like, what do? You have a DNR. She's been resuscitated. Now she's got a pulse. They load her into the ambulance. They take her to the hospital. It's just absolutely crazy. So the next morning, trying to figure out exactly where my mom was in this hideous process, I get into a car and I'm driving my daughter, dropping her off at her house, because I didn't want her to go with me, because I didn't know what it was gonna look like at the hospital when I got there. And this song, To Build a Home, came on. And Mackenzie and I loved this movie. And it was The Fault in Our Stars, I think, that this song or the soundtrack came from. And it was the most beautiful, calming, yet you could mourn and grieve, but you were comforted. And it came on as soon as I got in the car, where I was like getting all crazy about like medical malpractice and why are they doing all these things to my mom's body? Like, I just want her to go in peace. But it was part of the bigger plan. So this song was on as soon as I got into the car, and I listened to it, and Mackenzie looked at me and she's like, she's right here. She's like letting us know. I listened to that song on repeat, probably 180 times, from Jacksonville to the Sarasota Memorial Hospital. And I walked into that hospital and my mom was still alive. So had she not been resuscitated, I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to tell her everything that I wanted to tell her, even though she wasn't coherent, but she was. And it was a beautiful moment. And I stayed with her for 3 hours, and her pulse rate was 102 on 0 life support, no longer on any type of a sedative. And the RN that was managing her care, after he got to know me and we talked a lot about everything, he just made a comment. He's like, look, you are so connected to your mom. And I can tell, like, because of the levels of care that you can discuss and her vitals and everything that you managed during her horrible run with multiple myeloma, which was created by Satan, by the way. All cancer is created by Satan. He said, I think you need to ask her for a sign, because obviously she didn't want to pass when you were at the house. I'd been home for 4 days. I drove to Jacksonville after having a beautiful 4 days with my mom, and my mom lets go while I'm in Jacksonville. I'm far enough away, but close enough to home that I could turn around and go back and say goodbye to her and still be with my father in this horribly painful situation. I look at her and say, I need a sign from you, because I want to stay here and be with you when you take your last breath. But I also haven't seen Dad since everything went down. And I'm just wondering, if you want me to leave and go be with Dad, you've got to show me something. And her pulse that was fixed at 102 for 3 hours went from 102 to 103, 104, 105, 106, 107. The RN said, if I was not standing here, I would not believe this. He's like, but this is powerful. You just got your answer. I literally said goodbye to her. And it wasn't as hard to walk away from her, even knowing that I wasn't going to be with her in those final moments. This RN exhibited so much love. His name is Merle. I'm going to find him again, because he really comforted me in a way that I felt calm enough to leave, knowing that he was going to make her as comfortable as possible when she left this planet. And I walked into my house about 15 minutes later, and I embraced my dad for the first time since everything went on. And my aunt, my mom's sister, lives right down the street. She came over. And as soon as the 3 of us were together in our house, I got a phone call from Merle that my mom had just passed. So I don't know. I've got chills, up and down and on my scalp right now. And I'm so blessed to have received these signs. And so my message to all of you is, don't put up a wall. Like, just believe, because if you believe, you really do receive. But you have to be emotionally evolved and open, and then you will connect. And my dad is a closed book, and he's a scientist. And it's frightening, because I keep saying to him, this is going to help you. And my mom and dad have those chairs that are automated. They recline, they basically pop you up. And my dad is sitting in his chair, and I'm looking through boxes of photos, and we have a caretaker that's making dinner in the kitchen. And my dad starts freaking out and calling us. And I run in, and my mom's chair, for no reason, is now in the upright position where it would help her get up out of her chair and stand. And my dad is like, what the heck is going on? What's going on with mom's chair? And I said, that's mom letting you know that she's here. And he's trying to say, well, there must have been like some type of a short, or maybe there's some power surge. And he's trying to be, the scientist. And I said, Dad, this is something that you can't explain, just like miracles. You just have to recognize mom knows she's pulling out all the stops for you, because you're a closed mind. But do you get it now? So, wowza.
Yeah. When you get that chill, that means the spirits are giving you a hug. And that's when I was talking to one of my mediums, which, yes, I do have a few. Just my dad had passed, and I'm like, God, when you get these, I was like, God, I got chills. She goes, oh, that's your dad giving you a hug. So anytime you're out there and you're thinking of like a loved one that passed, all of a sudden, if you get chills head to toe,
or
it's
talking about them.
Yeah. Or talking about them. It's
you're allowing them
a hug.
You're allowing them in.
Right.
That's what.
Yeah.
Being open.
You're recognizing that it's a possibility, and you're allowing the connection to happen, and it happens.
Well, and for all the science brains, because my father is very similar, and Farley and I have spoken about our parents who very much resemble one another in a lot of ways, and we've had the opportunity to share a lot of time together. The way I think about things is that, from a scientific air quote standpoint, and this is very non-scientific, but it's what I believe, is that, energy in the universe is never destroyed, right? It just takes another form, and we may not understand the form of it for those science people, but it's still there. Like, it doesn't vanish. Like, it just takes a new lens to see and feel and be a part of it. And when you do, the magic that you believed in as a kid, it never leaves. It's still there if you allow it to come into you, I believe. So I mean,
Right.
I know that the people that have passed, my grandparents and other loved ones that are no longer with us. My husband lost his father at a very young age. When he opens up a little bit and he sees the signs, he's blown away. But there's also a part of him that I know that he's closed to it, because it's also very
painful,
very hurtful and very painful, because you have a missing of someone that you love so much.
Well, when my dad passed away, who was the coolest cat ever, died from a knee replacement infection. And that was horrible. I remember one story before I go to the sign is my friend calls me in the middle of the night, Jennifer Schaefer. She's a spiritual
a
healer,
crazy medium.
Yeah. And she calls out of blue. She's like, yeah, your dad has pressure in his chest. And I'm like, oh, okay, great to talk to you. A friend you don't talk to forever. And it went on. And one day I'm talking to her. She goes, your dad's toenail keeps getting caught on the sheet. And we rip up the sheet, and here's this giant size 14 toenail getting hung up on the sheet. I was like, oh my God, Jen, thanks for calling me from LA to tell me that. So all these really interesting stories, just talking to my dad through Jennifer about his health. How are you feeling? How are you doing? And, finally I want to be there, but I can't. Once he passes, and he passed in front of me, and I was hitting his eyeballs, and they kept flopping open. And I'm like, oh, it's not like the movies where when you shut them, they shut. Your eyeballs literally, they don't stick.
I just went through that.
Yeah, they bounce up. So we put together we're putting together his funeral, and now we have everyone in a procession. Now we're going by my parents' house, and it goes by our favorite bar in the world called the Parker House. And it's February, and its bar isn't open. And all of a sudden, we have this whole procession going through on your way to the graveyard, because you have to do a drive by the beach, because my dad was a beach guy. And all of a sudden, we look up at the pulpit of our favorite bar in the world, the Parker House, and there is a giant eagle sitting there statuesque looking. It's the biggest eagle I have ever seen in my life. We all look up and we're like, oh my God, that's Grandpa. So now we realize that Grandpa has come back as an eagle. I mean, there's not a lot of eagles in New Jersey. So eagle equates to dad every time. Now for my sister, she was going through some hard times, and an eagle would just soar above her head all the time. And it's just when she needed him the most, she'd look up in the sky, and here was a giant eagle. I saw it every now and then. And then my husband one day, who had been dealing with a lot of stuff, all of a sudden drives out of our driveway, and an eagle was flying above his head. And it's been really exciting, because if you're bummed, you're like, Dad, please send me a sign. Please send me a sign. And here comes this giant eagle. Now there's been 3 of them, because my cousin died. And we also think the third one is Oakley, which is my cousin's son, who died years ago from
anaphylactic.
Anaphylactic. So it's the 3 of them are always soaring in the skies together, and it's just amazing. So anytime I want to say, hey, Dad, I need some advice, I need a sign, is this a good idea? The eagle shows up. So I embrace it, and I think everyone needs to find it.
I'll tell you, your dad, okay, who's my father-in-law, towards the end of his life, I was taking care of him a lot. He was in a facility very close to where Pat and I live, and I would go over in the morning and make sure that everything was running smoothly, or it wasn't. Facilities, you need an advocate. I'm just going to put that out there right now.
This will be another podcast.
Advocate, being an advocate and having an advocate is going to be a podcast in its own. When my mom got diagnosed with multiple myeloma out of nowhere, and all of a sudden financially, it's like a scary thing to ponder because chemo is so expensive and oral chemo is like $1,000 a pill. And my mom got diagnosed in 2022 in January. And I had talked to a person that was explaining all of the side effects about chemo. And my mom was literally going in the next morning for her first chemo session. And this woman said to me, your mom might be the right person for like the leukemia lymphoma grant. And it will take care of all of your immediate costs because you're already going through something so hideously painful. They try to take away the stress that could go into financially trying to figure out how you're going to make it work, especially in the beginning of the year when there's a big deductible. Now, my parents financially are fine, but it is something. It's basically their mission is we don't want you to have to think about anything stressful. We want you to think about yourself. So this woman was kind enough and said, I'm going to go ahead and put all the paperwork through. It could be, 3 weeks to a month before you hear back. This is great. Hopefully this is going to work out for you. So the next morning, I take my mom to get her first chemo session. I go into the financial department because I want to take care of her first 6 chemo treatments so that there's never a finance question. They're not saying, hey, Betty Sue Snow, you need to be seen in finance before you can get your chemo, which is what they do. I go in, I sit down, and I said, I'm ready to take care of my mom's bill for the next, 6 sessions. And they said, well, there is no bill. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, the lymphoma leukemia grant she received. She's been awarded that grant. And I said, what do you mean she's been awarded this grant? Like, we just put the paperwork in last night. It was the anniversary of my father-in-law's passing. And I think because he knew I was going to roll up my sleeves and really like take care of my mom, and I did the best job that I could with him, he made that happen in 11 hours. My mom got the grant. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And we just had the passing, my father-in-law's anniversary again in January, and my mom relapsed. And unfortunately, when she relapsed, they had to change gears and she had to go after a totally different protocol. And it was another expense, and it wasn't going to be covered by the Lymphoma and Leukemia Foundation. But I walked in to take care of the finances, and out of nowhere, my mom qualified for another grant that was automatically applied to her account. And I found out on my father-in-law's, the anniversary of his passing. So double whammy, signs out the wazoo, and powerful people that can make things happen. Yeah. So thank you, Grandpa.
Yes, Grandpa. Grandpa's always taking care of everyone. He always wants to make sure people are happy. Speaking of grandfathers, so my mom's grandpa, Jack, came back as a cardinal. Day he died, all of a sudden a cardinal flies into her room, sits on her dresser, and is just staring at my mom and would not leave her room. And forever, you just see a cardinal that just lives outside of my mom's house, and we believe it's our grandfather. And I had another friend who lost her best friend. She was our age, Kendra Keystone, and her friend came back as a cardinal, and every day for the last 2-3 years, this cardinal sits outside of her window, pecks at the window, and has not left her window. And they say that cardinals come back as many spirits, but just got to look for it and believe it and see what's out there. And Aunt Diane. So my one of my cousins, I have 32 first cousins on my mom's side. And my mom's sister, Diane Cross, who was Diane Taylor, when she passed a couple years ago, she came back as a seagull. And my cousin Bernadette was like, oh, Grandma, or Mom, show me a sign. And she loved seagulls. And one day, the seagull is walking towards her and just was almost following her like a dog. And here was this beautiful seagull from New Jersey that is now my aunt. What would you guys want to come back as?
So great.
I mean, I'll tell you a story that was mind-blowing. So one of my best friends, like my husband's favorite person on this planet, one of my best friend's husbands, Kenny Swain, when he passed, it was tragic. It came out of nowhere and it affected us all. It just like rocked this community upside down. But this guy is so powerful. I was sitting next to Jen Schaefer, Darian's medium that's in her back pocket, at Darian and Jeff's wedding. And their wedding, actually, well, your wedding is the same anniversary as Kim and Kenny's, which is like bizarre. So I'm going to a wedding on my friend's anniversary, and it happened to be, what was the moon called that night?
It was a harvest moon.
A harvest moon. It was like the most beautiful, crazy, crazy moon. I am sitting next to Jen, and Jen is not somebody that approaches anybody with her gift. Like, she used to be, in finance, and she had such strange, just, I don't even know, visions, I guess. She basically is responsible for leading the FBI to the Central Park killer. She knew where the body was. She started working for the FBI missing persons unit. Like, I mean, she is legit. And I know that some people get very freaked out by this because from a religious standpoint, it says in Deuteronomy, it says in a lot of different places that you should not believe anybody that speaks of anything besides God, because, you look to God for your answers. But in this situation, I feel like God gives people gifts. And if you have a gift and you're utilizing it for the goodness of mankind, I don't think it's taboo. That might just be my personal opinion. But so she sits next to me and she says, Farley, I don't even know how to say this to you. And she's like, but there is like a very aggressive spirit like coming at me and asking me to confront you with this. And she's like, does this ring a bell? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what would his name be? And I said, well, his name would be Kenny Swain. And she goes, oh, he just said to me, I told you she believes in all this hocus pocus bullshit. And that's exactly what. So then I have like the chills all over me. And I'm just like, oh my God, he's here. And she's like, something really interesting happened right here. We're sitting in my mother-in-law's backyard. We're having this beautiful evening on behalf of Darian and Jeff. And she said, something funny happened right here. Tell me what happened right here. And this is Kenny coming through her. Well, Kim and Kenny had come to my husband's 40th birthday where he was like singing and would not relinquish the microphone and was just absolutely having a ball. But they tried to do a Houdini, and they came down in a classic car that they didn't put in a shop before they drove it. And my husband said, dude, you're taking a chance on that. He's like, you didn't get it tuned up. It's like the first day that she's running. I don't think I'd take that car. It's not wise. Kenny's like, yeah, whatever. I'm driving her. So they come down in this car. They make this beautiful entrance. They look really cool and regal. But doing the Houdini, they didn't look so regal because all of a sudden they're pulling past us, trying to be quiet. And the car conks out and we were dying. We're looking at them off of the property on, Ocean Avenue, and the car is completely stopped. It literally had to be towed away. And it was just so funny. So because I knew exactly what story she was talking about, she said something else happened over here. I looked over there. After his funeral, we were all sitting as a family, the Boyles, all of us were sitting as a family. And I'm not kidding you, the day after his funeral, a bagpiper came out of the house across the street playing Amazing Grace.
Oh,
no, Amazing Grace. Playing Amazing Grace out of nowhere. Like it made no sense. It wasn't St. Patrick's Day. It made zero sense that somebody's coming out of a house within eyeshot of my mother-in-law's playing Amazing Grace. And we all just got like, whoa. I mean, and the gifts just kept coming and coming. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but it was a gift. I had to say to Kim, you're not going to believe me because she's another closed book. But Kenny's coming through and talking to me left and right. And I'm going to tell you exactly what he said. In fact, back to your engagement party or your wedding celebration after the wedding. He said, I should have danced to this song with Kim. She loved this song. I can't tell you how many times she's asked me to dance to this song and I never did. And I have regrets and I should have danced with her to this song. So I reiterated all of this stuff to her. And finally he got through to her. And I have a heart book. I see hearts in nature everywhere. I mean, really amazing hearts that just manifest when you need to see them the most. Kim didn't do anything for 3 months. She has a lot of children and she wanted to be home and be present for her kids. And I finally got her to go out one night and have a cocktail. And we were having a martini and we were talking about all the signs. And please be open to them, Kim. It's going to make you feel better. And the very first drip of condensation from the martini that she was holding formed a perfect heart on her jeans. And she points to it. And this is a page in my book. And she's like, so I suppose that this is Kenny? And I'm like, yeah, that's Kenny. So I took a picture of it. Another story about Kenny, her daughters both make their confirmation. And we go celebrate, and we are at the Rumson Country Club, and it's the most beautiful day, and we're all together as a family, and we're celebrating something pretty powerful. And out of nowhere, a huge, enormous rainbow. We went out onto the deck and took a picture as a family under the rainbow, a massive rainbow. And there's no weather, there's no rain, there's not even a cloud really in the sky. So you got to believe to receive, people.
Yes. That Farley set it up, sums it up.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys will all remove the barriers and start looking for anything that makes you happy or helps you get through whatever it is that you need help getting through. Affirmation, making a decision, looking at your horoscope, and it just makes sense that day. The more you are open to receiving, the more you will be gifted.
Well, I think that's a great place to keep our listeners in that amazing energy of beautiful and boundless opportunity and being connected with their loved ones, being connected with the universe, being connected with people here on earth. So I want to thank everybody for tuning into another episode of Girls Gone Gritty. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts and see the magic today and every day. And thank you so much for tuning in. Peace.
When I come back, I'm coming back as a dolphin. Peace out, Girls Gone Gritty.
Oh, I don't know what I am.
I don't know. I used to think I wanted to be an eagle, but now I think I want to be a lab because my lab lives a pretty damn good life.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Maybe, I don't know what I'm going to be. I'm going to think about that.
All right, we'll be back.
Bye.